Thanks very much for staying with us. Time now for Eye on Africa with me, Georgia Calvin-Smith. Tonight, Nigeria's Supreme Court suspends the old-for-new currency swap deadline that's caused pre-electoral chaos. 3 states have launched legal challenges arguing that the central bank is due a rethink because of the hardship caused by shortages in the new denominations. Also, Algeria is amongst the nations racing to help Turkey and Syria in the wake of the devastating quakes that have cost around 12,000 lives. We hear from some of the Algerian teams on the ground. And we meet a prize-winning Ivorian scientist hoping that her work on bio-pesticides will help transform sustainable agriculture. But first, Nigeria's Supreme Court has put the brakes on government plans to drop old banknotes out of circulation from Friday. Nigerians were due to turn in old denominations of the currency in order to make way for new ones, but the swap has caused chaotic scenes at banks, cash shortages and protests. The International Monetary Fund had called on Nigeria's central bank to extend the currency deadline because of the disruption it was causing. Our Samuel Okoye tells us more.
The protests are spreading across Nigerian towns as the populace cannot get the country's newly introduced banknotes. Nigerians have until Friday to swap their old notes with new ones. But those who have the old notes cannot spend them because no one will accept them. The banks and automated teller machines, which are supposed to issue the new notes, are not doing so because they have exhausted their limited supply. The result is that anger has boiled over, as many Nigerians can't get money to buy even basic commodities like food. Protesters have been blocking major highways and making bonfire. The banks have been witnessing angry scenes, with fighting breaking out among frustrated customers. Some desperate customers have even stripped naked inside banking halls as they plead that they must withdraw their money to survive. In recent days, several commercial banks and their workers have been attacked by angry protesters. Some banks, fearing attacks by customers, have shut down in the wake of the protest. Police and soldiers, firing live rounds, have intervened to violently put down the protest in some locations. At least one person was shot dead as security agents fired at the protesters. Although the Supreme Court has temporarily stopped the government from enforcing Friday's deadline for the discontinuation of the old notes, this does not bring any relief since no one wants to accept the old currency anyway.
Samuel Okoye there for us. Now, Algeria is one of the many countries that have sent rescue teams to Turkey and Syria in the aftermath of the deadly earthquakes. The announcement was made with great fanfare, with Algerian President Abdelmajid Tebboune saying that he wanted Algiers to be at the forefront of the response. Caroline Lamberley tells us more.
Searching through the rubble, these Algerian rescue workers are working around the clock, hoping to pull out any potential survivors in the Syrian city of Aleppo, which lies in government-controlled territory. It's one of many areas which was hit by the deadly earthquake earlier this week.
The conditions are very difficult. I don't know what to tell you. There are many victims that haven't been found yet. Some others were found dead and some were found alive.
Algeria has maintained diplomatic ties with Damascus since the start of the Syrian civil war in 2011. It's also lobbied in favor of Syria's readmission to the Arab League, which suspended Damascus at the start of the war. Algeria has also sent rescuers to Turkey, and it's providing dozens of tons of food, medical products, and tents to both countries. Several other countries across the continent have sent aid, including Libya and Tunisia. In Libya, which is controlled by 2 governments, the aid appears to have reflected regional alliances. Authorities in the capital, Tripoli, were quick to announce that they were sending around 50 rescuers to Turkey. Around a day later, they announced they would also be sending a shipment of humanitarian aid to Syria.
Well, Algeria has said that relations with France have been greatly damaged and it's recalled its ambassador to Paris. The rift comes after France intervened to fly a French-Algerian activist out of Tunisia. Amira Bouraoui was sentenced in Algeria in 2021 for offending the president. She wasn't placed under arrest pending an appeal, but was banned from leaving the country. She was arrested in Tunisia last Friday, trying to board a flight to France. After her release, she was granted protection from the French consulate in Tunis and flown out. The housemate of Edwin Chiloba, the LGBTQ rights campaigner whose body was found in a box in Kenya last month, has pled not guilty to murder. Jackton Odiambo will remain in custody until a bail hearing on February the 16th. Chiloba died from suffocation caused by socks stuffed into his mouth. South Africa's Consumer Goods Council says that customers are in for much higher prices for food and other essentials if the energy crisis continues on as is. On Wednesday, CEOs sent an open letter to President Cyril Ramaphosa saying that companies and retailers face soaring costs by using backup power supplies to stay in business as regular power cuts continue to cripple the economy. Ramaphosa is expected to address the power crisis in Thursday's State of the Nation address. As the Nairobi River snakes across the Kenyan capital, it's exposed to a lot. It runs through settlements with no sewage systems. It's used as a dumping site for industrial waste, and it is chock full of dangerous pollutants and heavy metals. The government said that it is committed to a cleanup, but it's given no deadline or budget, and the commission allocated to that task has yet to meet. Caroline Lamberley with more.
Once pristine, it's now a sorry sight. Residential and industrial waste, in addition to sewage from nearby slums.
We were young, we could cross the river into this other estate and go have some fun out there and then come back to the same river and just cross, But right now, considering the amount of pollution that's inside this river, it's difficult for someone to cross this river barefoot. Because of the broken glasses and all that from the industries like in the light industries and other industries out there.
Several informal settlements have cropped up around the river. Most are not connected to sewer lines. They have open trenches that lead directly into the river. This has an impact further downstream, like in this area south of the capital, where many of the vegetables that end up in Nairobi markets are grown.
Farming has been difficult. The main challenge is water. Sometimes the water is good and other times it's not. Mainly, the water is good when it rains because the river gets cleaned out, but when the rains stop, the water is salty and full of chemicals. Sometimes the yields are good and other times not so much.
The authorities have been accused of laxity and of turning a blind eye to the impact of industry. But some initiatives are bringing back hope, like in Kibera, which is known as the continent's biggest slum. Local actors have been collaborating with the authorities to construct modern toilet blocks that are connected to the sewer line.
Organic pesticides are both economically and environmentally important in protecting crops in ways that minimally impact the ecosystem within which they're being grown. A prize-winning Ivorian scientist has been speaking to our team in Ivory Coast about the years of research that she's put into developing a bio-pesticide that can preserve prized yam crops for months rather than weeks. Sophie Lamotte has more.
Ajata Kamara has an unusual scientific specialty. She spends her day tracking down mouldy and rotten yams.
There's a cut here, made during the harvest, and there are small openings that were created when the yam was still underground. These small openings are where the mushrooms will take root, and with the hot temperature, there'll most likely be rot on them.
As part of her PhD research in sustainable agriculture, the 26-year-old Ivorian created an organic pesticide to protect yams from mold and rot. She carried out much of her research in this lab in the prestigious Félix Houphouët-Boigny University.
I am going to use this biopesticide to control this fungus called Potriotropodia, which causes black rot on yams.
Ajata Kamara comes from a family of farmers and grew up seeing how easily crops can go to waste when they are ravaged by fungi. Natural pesticides were often used on her parents' plantation to try and head off the damage.
It's a biopesticide that is made from plants. These are plants that our parents in the village were already using as a repellent against insects. So I thought to myself, if it helps repel insects, it means that we can use it for other purposes.
Her work is good for the environment and crop health, but also for the economy. Adjata Kamara's biopesticides help farmers protect their crops and traders increase their margins.
Miss Kamara's products give us something extra, because without them, a lot of it ends up rotting. But when we use the products, instead of having losses, now we have profits. In terms of business, it's really good for profits.
In 2022, Adjata Kamara's research earned her the L'Oréal UNESCO Prize for Women in Science. She was given €10,000 as part of the award and is determined to take her research even further.
Well, that's it for Eye on Africa. Stay with France 24, where we'll be following the arrival of the Ukrainian leader Vladimir Zelensky in France. So do stay with the channel. More coming up after a short break.